Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Property Pros Podcast. I'm Mark Goldwich. I'm a public adjuster in Jacksonville, Florida, but interested in all things property. Today, we've got a great guest for you, Jared Taylor. Jared, take a couple of minutes, tell folks about yourself and also about Childers Construction.
So, thanks, Mark, for having me. I really appreciate being on the show. Yeah, Childers Construction is a construction management firm. We mainly deal in commercial construction. We do have several large clients. We're based mainly out of Tallahassee. Very, very down-to-earth company. Awesome place to work. Legitimately one of the best places I've ever worked in my life. So one of my favorite things about Childers is that from the construction management standpoint, that, in my opinion, is a much better model when dealing with contract vehicles from a consumer perspective, from a business owner perspective, and even as a labor worker perspective. That just facilitates and fosters a much better teamwork relationship as opposed to the adversarial ones you can get with cost plus or hard bid, things like that. So this is my first time working for a construction management firm, and it's been very eye-opening, and I definitely have enjoyed it versus anything else I've done. So I've done everything from residential to federal and now commercial and construction management.
Very cool. We do get a lot of property managers on the show and PRO. But it's funny, I was talking with somebody earlier today who owns a construction company about, he's talking about the difference between project manager and I guess projects for supervisor or on-site supervisor. And he was explaining the difference as far as who's on site and who's in the office. So as project manager, Jerry, do you do more work in the field or in the office?
Mostly office work as a project manager. Stereotypical project management role is the project manager is going to be the one that's going to deal with the cost, the schedule, and the contract. Project managers are making sure that all the documents are put into place properly. We make sure that the products that we are purchasing, the owner is purchasing, are actually what they're getting. So the subcontractors that'll be on a project, HVAC, your plumbers, your site person, whomever, they turn in their submittals for all of the various furnishings, fixtures, equipment, whatever's going into the construction project. We review that. We make sure that, yep, this is exactly what the customer asked for, or this is what has been specified by the architect team. We coordinate with the architect team, and ultimately, at the end of the day, we're the ones that are managing the contracts. The face-to-face conversations with the client, various stakeholders. Majority of a project manager's job really is kind of herding cats, to put it bluntly, and it's stakeholder engagement and communication. So on site, you have a superintendent, and this should be in an ideal world, you would have a very cohesive team between the superintendent and the project manager. They both work together to achieve the same goal. They just have different priorities. The superintendent is going to deal with day-to-day operations on the site. They're going to make sure they're going to be controlling the schedule of work, the workflow, and the quality of work, and making sure everything's built to code. They're managing the safety of the site, the security of the site, all of those things. If there's a problem, if there's a request for information, or there needs to be a change order or something like that, that's when they bring the project manager in. They're like, hey, we have this change in the contract, or we have this going on over here, and it's a 1A, 1B relationship.
All right, very cool. Now that folks know a little bit more about what it is that you do, tell us how you got there, how you got your start. You can go all the way back to, I was looking at your resume, and of course, you know, when you see explosive ordnance disposal technician, it kind of catches your eye a little bit. How about give us the start from there?
Okay, well, I was pretty young, a military kid myself, and several generations of military for my family. I wasn't going to join. 9/11 happened, that kind of kicked that off. And my dad gave me 3 pieces of advice when I joined. He said, first off, make sure you have a guaranteed job when you sign up. Don't go in general open. Don't let them just put you wherever they want to put you. Have a guaranteed job. Don't join any form of a security forces, military, police, anything like that as a junior enlisted person, and retire as an officer. Well, so I took his advice. I went in and I was looking for jobs. I didn't want to sit behind a desk. And this one said, blow stuff up, protect the president. And I was like, and literally that is what the ad for the job was. And I was like, that sounds cool. So I signed up for that. And my dad shook his head. He's like, I didn't tell you to do that either. Um, so that started my military career. I'm very proud to have been an EOD technician. I was very proud I served in the Air Force. I did a little bit of a stint with some Navy guys in EOD out in Afghanistan. That was a very different world, very different experience. Even though we all trained at the same school, all of us have different specialties that we focus on. So that was eye-opening. Well, I was medically retired in 2010, and I had no idea what I was going to do with myself. I had this GI Bill to use. I was in Arizona. I retired out of Davis-Monthan. So I went to the University of Arizona, and I've always kind of had a bit of a problem with authority. And they told me, well, you have to do these things to get a degree. And I disagreed with them and said, no, I don't like that. So the only way around having to do all these requirements was to double major. And I double majored in physics and geoscience. I do not ever recommend doing that. That was definitely not a good life choice as far as any kind of freedom or, well, sanity. And then while I'm doing all that and just kind of going through life trying to figure it out after the military, my grandfather's health turned for the worst. I moved back here to take care of him where I'm at in Florida. And there was nothing for me to do. I actually could go back and teach and do things in my career field in the military, or I could not do that, which was very much what I wanted to do at that point in time, was not anything not related to being an EOD tech at that point. And that limited my options, but I grew up learning a trade. Like everywhere we went, my dad always made sure that I learned how to do something, whether it was you build a house, a barn, fix a car, whatever it was. So I leaned back on that. I got in with a residential contractor who needed a project manager. He was a smaller builder, and he was willing to train. So within 2 years of working with him, I started out as a helper, and I became a foreman, superintendent, project manager, kind of 3-hat role. And I was working 70, 80 hours a week, building these houses, getting these custom homes up off the ground. And it was a lot of fun, but the money wasn't there. The market wasn't there. So I then got offered a job in federal. And the whole time I kept trying to bolster kind of education and training. And somehow I just kept getting thrown into, it was like the good Lord just kept wanting me for whatever reason to go into training in some regard. Well, I get back to Arizona to work for the USDA as a facility supervisor, and brought training back in that regard too to student veterans, because now I'm back in Tucson. I know this area. I know how to work the system. So start developing these education programs, these pipeline programs through the construction efforts that I was doing at this research facility. Well, then a job opened up here at a local college where I'm at, and they needed a program director for the trades. So came back here to do that, develop trades and education programs for construction trades and other workforce development initiatives, and quickly realized that the collegiate environment was not necessarily the best environment to be doing that in. That we could actually do more in industry. I could do more in industry, and I could do more privately than I ever could at a college. So one of my advisors on my advisory council just so happens to be my boss now. When I told him I was leaving the college, he asked for my resume, and that is how I ended up in the commercial construction management contracting world.
Day to day, what type of work does Childers do?
So I know we have several very, very large projects in the Capitol in Florida, working on Capitol buildings. We've done stadiums, we've done hospitals, we've done schools, we've done churches, larger scale commercial construction. I think there were some houses and stuff that were thrown in here and there, much larger homes for people, multi-million-dollar homes and things like that, especially on the beach. You know, construction on the dunes and construction anywhere on the coast is very difficult, especially the Gulf Coast, because of the amount of hurricanes. Strangely enough, so Florida building code is the most strict building code in the nation. We have a more strict building code than anywhere else. So a lot of times when you see like international building code or international code council specifications for things, they can't apply to Florida because ours is more strict. California has a very strict one too, but for different reasons. Us is hurricanes and wind, theirs is earthquakes.
Yeah, and you've been in the Panhandle since 2020?
I've been back here
Is that
since.
right?
So this place,
Okay.
throughout my life, I keep getting brought back here for some reason. My mom's family's from here, so like every other duty assignment we got put here. And then I didn't even know EOD school was here, but that's where I came to EOD school here. Then came back to take care of my grandfather, and then came back for kid and all these things. So for whatever reason, God keeps bringing me right back here.
The thing is, you're in the Panhandle area, and there've been several storms. Which of the were you there for Michael or Sally, or what have you been there to experience as far as hurricanes?
So I was here for Michael. I was here for Sally. I was actually here for Opal back in the day, and George. I think it was either George or Andrew. I can't remember which one. But there was the other one that I was actually living here during when it hit. I'm still actually repairing a lot of the damage from Hurricane Michael. We're still working on that here in Florida. So that is still an ongoing project. Hopefully, we are at the end of that. We're starting to see the light at the end of that tunnel to finally get school systems and government buildings and things like that brought back up to speed and the way they were before. But it's taken 5 years at this point to get this stuff fixed.
Right. Yeah, we were there for Michael, and one of our larger projects was an apartment complex that we helped. It was a single owner. He was from, I think, Alabama, but he had this apartment complex, 15, 16 quads, I think they were, in the Panhandle area when Michael hit, and did pretty good amount of damage. And we're still working on Hurricane Sally claims. All of our Michael claims are done. We're still working on Hurricane Sally claims, mostly in Pensacola area. So yeah, I've been there. I was there for Hurricane Ivan. I don't know if you were there for that in 2004.
That always brings
that was a good one. That was a tough one. So it's cool. You do a lot of construction, but is it your personal interest that brings you back to training and education?
If you would have asked anybody in my life previously whether or not I was ever going to be an educator of any kind, they would have laughed at you very hard, including my ex-wife, who happens to be a teacher, my mother, who's a teacher, and several of the people that I know who are educators. I don't know how I fell into it other than literally to say that God threw me into it, and that's what I've been doing since. For whatever reason, I keep getting brought back to it, and I've realized the importance. A great example literally happened to me last night. So up here in the Panhandle, we have what I affectionately call the 1099 culture. There's a union here, and while I'm not necessarily pro-union, one thing that unions do a phenomenal job of is regulating training and requirements for trades and craftsmen. They set standards, and they maintain those standards, and they push education. We don't have that here. Instead, we have what I call the 1099 culture, which means that every single person that you see working is a 1099 employee. They don't work for an employer necessarily. They're a sub, and the way the government or the way these employers are getting around paying certain taxes and workman's comp and all these other wages and fees and things is to 1099 their workers. And it happens all over the place. It's very common practice here, but you can't facilitate training in that kind of an environment, not necessarily, right? It's very hard to do. Basically, you throw people into the frying pan and say, figure it out, or, go find another job or go work somewhere else. Plus, we also have this stigma of these school systems are still pushing essentially that if you can't do anything else in life, then you can go do construction. At least that's available for you. It's not a construction, even though it's getting better, it's still not a glorified, well-respected career field like it was back in the 40s and 50s, right? We got away from that. We started pushing 4-year degrees, and that really started hurting people. And in the high schools, in a lot of the schools that are here still, you have administrators who push STEM and liberal arts instead of construction trades programs, when that is going to help more people in the long run than a 4-year college degree ever will. So being in a leadership position in these various roles and companies that I've worked for, one of my jobs was to find help, was to hire people, and finding skilled labor, skilled workforce, people that had any idea what they were doing was next to impossible. So what ended up happening was I would have to train people. I'd have to bring them under my wing. I'd have to get them built up. And as long as you had really good employment practices, usually you could have decent retention. And if you train these people well, if you invested in your people, then they would stay with you, and you'd actually see a return on your investment in educating and training them. Well, society still looks towards educational institutions to fix this role, right? They still look at colleges, especially community colleges, to be like, hey, train people. And the colleges are getting grants, they're getting funding, they're getting all this money to do this. But again, they're still focused on the academia side of the house, workforce development. Even though it's being pushed by the state, pushed by the legislature, the governor himself is like, hey, this is something we need to be doing. And senators and representatives are all pushing this. The colleges themselves just haven't ever really caught on to it, not in any kind of meaningful way. And so what's happened is that industry has taken the burden of training and educating people. Because of that, every role I find myself in, I end up training and educating someone. So while I was at the college, while I was developing those programs, I morphed those programs into programs that industry could use, that different chapters like or organizations like ABC North Florida, right? The ABC North Florida chapter is huge on training and education. And they would love to bring in kind of all-encompassing training program that their members could benefit from. Every time that the member would hire a new person, they could take that person and then put them into this training program, and within 2 years have a skilled worker, if not a supervisor of some kind, out of that individual. So it's filling a need. Every time I turn around, that's the same need. People need more money. They need jobs. They need to be able to put food on their table, to be able to afford a table. And the best way that I can do that is by taking an 18-year-old person, and by the time they're 24, have them at a $65,000 a year plus job in construction, which is very feasible to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. This morning, I was at a coaching group session where all the members in our coaching group, and we're all different businesses. One of them's a contractor. One of them's one of them's an attorney that leases office space. One guy does hurricane shutters. There's various different groups, and they're not all construction or even real estate related. But common theme that kept going around was training for our whether it's employees or our 1099s. All of my folks are 1099s, but we still, and they're really 1099s because they are true independent contractors and not treated like employees. They're not directed what to do, where to go, and all of those things. But regardless of our businesses, the common theme to improve the business itself was to train the people who work for the business, regardless of whether they were 1099s or straight employees. So it's, I'm sure your employer loves that you have that background and can bring that, because not everybody can. A lot of people can do the work, but they don't understand how to effectively train others to do it as well. And they don't find people who are interested in training others. They just want to do their job and be left alone, right? So you've kind of taken it beyond that.
I enjoy imparting knowledge. I enjoy that. I call them light bulb moments, even with my kids, right? Especially kids, but my kids in particular. I'm a little biased towards them, as you could probably, but they have their little light bulb, right? They can't do something, they can't do something, they can't do something, and all of a sudden they can, and they realize that they can. And that light bulb goes off, that their eyes get big and wide and they get excited about it and they want to go do that thing. Adults do that too. And I love seeing that look on somebody, that aha moment of, oh, I know what I'm doing. I can do this. It is great. In fact, I just had that opportunity this morning training a new project engineer on how to operate certain kinds of equipment. Very young person. He had never been in any of this kind of equipment before. He was very nervous about it. A lot of this was at height, and we were going over the safety and stuff. He was very, very nervous, and took him up. And as soon as he got the controls, he figured out what to do. He was having a great time with it. And he was like, wait, I can do this. And I was like, yeah, you can, you got this. But you kind of proved my point there that industry, you guys are industry professionals. You guys are the ones talking about training. You're not bringing in the college to talk about this. You're not bringing in an educational institution to talk about it. You guys are doing that. And that's the point. That's more or less where I see the future of this going. What I feel like we need to do as a community is we all help each other in one way or another. Construction touches virtually every facet of life. So in yours with property, lawyers, I mean, we have construction specific lawyers out there, codes and ordinances and laws and regulations, all these things. Construction spurs the economy. There are all these things that construction does that if we would start working together to help fill those deficiencies and come up with some kind of a training program in and of itself that could be tracked, that could be recorded, and that we in industry would recognize. So if I had, if I train somebody and it's a certification that you recognize, and let's say it's property management, right? Let's say one of the certifications an individual can get based on this training program is property management, but it's not working out with me. Maybe construction just isn't their bag. Maybe swinging a hammer or laying pipe or HVAC or electrical just isn't their thing. Maybe they want to focus on that. Well, then I can call Mark up, and be like, hey, you need to go talk to Mark. Hey, Mark, I had a person. They're certified. Yep, it's that same program we all came up with. You got room for them? Yeah, sure, I got them. Bring them over there. It's that rising tide raises all boats, right?
Right, exactly. And I know in our industry now, I'm seeing recently a lot more joining of forces, seminars and conferences where the groups are being educated on the very latest, and it is contractors, engineers, attorneys, and adjusters, all of them getting together, all of them presenting courses and going from class to class in a couple of days and getting up to speed on the latest in the industry. Now, all of it for us is ultimately it's insurance related,
sure,
because that's what we all do. But I'm sure, or I can imagine in construction, it might be the same, or maybe it's not. You tell me. As far as what I'm seeing when I started in this industry in 2004, there was no coordination, there was no cooperation. Everybody held all their secrets close to the vest, and they didn't reveal. I mean, when I got started, I couldn't get someone to show me just a copy of the contract that they used, so that I can get some ideas on what I can put in mine, or, just what sample letters, anything, like it was a trade secret. I mean, these are contracts that they're handing out to the public left and right, but it was too secret to show me, right? But now you have forums, Facebook forums, and otherwise, where these documents are shared on a regular basis, and education and training and experience is given away. Is construction, is non-insurance construction anything like that now? Or is it moving there?
It really is. So, in fact, I had a conversation with our VP today, and we were talking about training in our company and starting to kind of see the need, looking at the age group of our people and average age in the company kind of thing. And he was of the mind that if we had somebody that was a really, really good candidate for construction, for especially construction management, that actually what we would do is we would go give them to another company that had a fully established and prepared training program, let that company train them through their internship programs. Even though we offer our own, it's usually a good idea to let somebody go get an outside perspective on something. And so if I have a sub working for me and I want to bring them on as a superintendent or some kind of construction manager, right? And I see their potential. Well, they've already worked with me as a sub. They already know, they have the institutional knowledge of Childers as it is. Well, I want them, and Sam's right about this, we want them to have a different perspective. And these other companies have different ways of training, but they already have their training set up and ready to go. So go with them, go do an internship. Once that internship's done, you can actually see that world through another lens, then come back, and then we're going to put you in the fire. Now we're actually going to test you, see what you learned while you were there, and put you to work. So yeah, there is a lot more sharing like that, sharing of personnel, sharing of information. Some of it's still close to the vest, but as more people start to retire out, the newer generations come in, there's not that secrecy as much anymore. It really just depends on how, it mostly depends on the age of the people in the company. The younger generations, younger folks, they're more apt to share information than the older.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it is the later generations are more open to sharing and getting along and not just being sharky and trying to keep believing that they can eat everything in the ocean is just not possible. There's
Right.
too much out there, but it's a mindset issue, and I think that's changing, and I think it's for the good. Now, you guys, you're in the coastal area in the Panhandle, beaches, lots of scene, lots of tourism. I'm sure there's things you have to deal with the environment versus construction, and how you have to now be careful and be mindful of how upsetting the construction is to the environment. But you still got to build, right?
I mean, yeah, we need buildings, we need roads, we need hospitals, we need fire stations, we need all those things, and those take structures, and that takes materials and equipment and time. But that's the biggest challenge, is building in with an environmental conscience on behind you, right? Being environmentally conscious and building at the same time, and how to blend those two together. So we're running into some serious problems, especially in Florida, right? So if you take a look at the current data that we have on water quality, for example, if you go onto the EPA's website at How's My Waterway and you look up the state of Florida, it has all these charts and graphs that tell you just how terrible our waters are, including for swimming, right? Like how bad it is not to even swim in our waters in the state of Florida. But the biggest issue is that we're getting so many people on planet Earth that we're going to start running out of these resources like water. And in fact, current projections is that come 2050, we'll have run out of water fresh drinking water by that point in time, based on the current practices that we have. That's a scary thing. Construction's going to have to be the one to fix that. All these environmental issues that we see here, the EPA puts out rules, sure. The federal government does their thing, but keep in mind that the federal government didn't do anything about the dust bowls in the 20s until the dust cloud actually reached Washington, D.C. And by that point, it was too late, and it took years and years, decades, to redo all of our agricultural practices and stop that from happening. We're running into the same thing with a lot of the building on the environment. A lot of people want to build, they want to grow, but they're destroying wetlands. We're destroying these ecosystems that we need to live. For example, like the honeybee, right? People don't like insects. I don't like bugs, but they're necessary for us. If the honeybee by itself, just the honeybee, if the honeybee disappeared from planet Earth, approximately 70% of the human population would go with it, because it's the most aggressive pollinator we have for our food. We need insects. We need these ecosystems to live. And the more we destroy them, the less of them we have. So it really is a hard balance to strike, but it's one we have to figure it out.
All right, Jared. Well, we're getting towards the end. I want to see if you have some way for people who are interested in Childers. How do they reach you? You have social media or website, phone number, anything that you want to leave, anything else that you want to say about the company?
So yeah, Childers is a phenomenal company, and I'm not just saying that because they pay me. They honestly are some of the best people I've ever worked for. Great individuals, very honest, and very much care about the quality of their work, which it's been a great experience for the past 2 years having worked for them. The website, www.childers-construction.com. Their phone number is 850-222-2281. You can call and get the main office, and if you're looking to start a project or literally anything else, Sam Childers is the owner. A very awesome individual to talk with. So again, I have nothing but good things to say about them, and I'm definitely glad for the opportunity to work for them.
Well, very good. I appreciate your taking the time to visit with us today, taking time out of your busy day. Really appreciate that. For folks out there, we'll have Jared's information and Childers' information come up on the screen for you. If you're interested in other episodes, check us out on social media at Property Pros Podcast. That's it for today. We'll see you again next time.